Well, let me tell you a little bit about my own experience with breathing disorders before we then go on and talk specifically about the science of the method and how it can help certain conditions. Yes, I was diagnosed with asthma as a 5-year-old back in the 1960s. Some of you remember those days, and if you do, you'll be aware that these medications for asthma didn't really come out until the late 60s. So I didn't actually go on to Ventolin until I was about 10 years of age. And like a lot of people who take Ventolin, when I first took it, I just thought it was fantastic. Because I'd just take one puff of this drug and all of a sudden that wheezing, that tightness, that heavy-chested feeling would just go away and everything would open up and finally I could get some relief. But the problem I had, and the problem that so many people do have, is that initially one puff will get you through, but then you start to need 2 or 3 or even 4 to get the same effect. Shortly after that I went on to Becotide, one of the early inhaled steroid medications. 2 years later I was put onto Intel. These days you get Intel through a puffer, but back then it was through a device called a spinhaler that some of you may remember from the 1970s. And then at 15 I had 2 very severe attacks which put me in the Austin Hospital in Melbourne. I should have said I was from Melbourne. And when I came out of hospital the first time, my family were told very sternly by the doctor that they had to go and buy a nebuliser for me. And I started using that with both Ventolin and Atrovent. Then I was given courses of prednisolone tablets and I started having side effects as a result of those. So within a very short space of time, it was a lot of asthma and it was a lot of medication, and it was very rare for me to sleep through a night without waking 2 to 3 times. And I'm sure I don't need to tell you people that breathing and sleeping disorders really do affect your quality of life. It certainly stopped me playing sport to the level that I thought I was capable of. And it also tends to take your confidence away when you always have to carry medication with you. I used to worry about catching a cold because that would become a chest infection, everything would get worse. And even going away became an ordeal because the family would have to take the nebuliser, the spacer and all the medication. And as I got a little bit older, particularly throughout my 20s, I looked for other ways to try to help to improve my health. And you may well have tried some of the things that I did. Physiotherapy, breathing, chiropractic, acupuncture, homeopathy, naturopathy, diet changes. But it didn't matter what I tried, it still had the asthma, still had the sleeping problems and still needed the drugs on a daily basis. And it was really by pure chance that I was fortunate enough to see one of the early current affairs segments on Buteyko. The situation was we were on holidays in Adelaide at the time, and you might have had this experience where you check into a hotel or motel room and the first thing you do is turn the TV on, just because it happens to be there. And straight away there it was in front of me, breakthrough method for breathing disorders. So naturally I watched it. And what I saw was a group of people being interviewed straight after a Buteyko course, making what I thought at the time were extraordinary claims about their rate of improvement. And I can't say I believed everything that was being said, but I was at least interested enough to try to find out a bit more. So I quickly made a note of the name. And as I was saying to a few of you at the start, I think that's one of the reasons why it's been hard to get information out there about Buteyko. It's a difficult word to remember, to spell, to pronounce. A lot of people think it's Japanese when they see or hear it for the first time. And you'd be amazed how many people have said to me, what's this potato method that you speak of? But anyway, I eventually tracked down an organisation by this name in Sydney, rang them up and found out that Sasha, the Russian practitioner, was coming down to Melbourne about 6 weeks later to run one of the early Melbourne courses. But before I would agree to do the course, I wanted to know what was the scientific basis of it, because I'm a scientist originally by profession and a fairly sceptical person. And they explained to me on the phone that it was based on what's called the Bohr effect, which I'll go through with you shortly. So I went along to the course, April 1994, and at that stage I was taking an average of 15 puffs of Ventolin per day, and usually waking 2 to 3 times throughout the night. Anyway, after 3 days of the Buteyko course, I went 24 hours without Ventolin, and on the 4th night of the course, I slept right through without disturbance. So here I was getting results like the people that I'd seen on TV, but not without effort. Changing your breathing certainly requires a level of effort and commitment. And that's one of the reasons why we'd like to open up these first sessions of the course, explain all these things to you, and most importantly, give you some challenges over the next 24 hours.